What I'd like to do is just offer a very quick couple of press statements in light of Lieutenant Governor's press statement of earlier today. And what I actually have here, and Ben, if you would, I'll get you to hand them out as I conclude my thoughts here. I have a letter for the Lieutenant Governor that I'll share with you all, and you all can review it at your pleasure. And the long and short of my letter to him is I very much appreciate the offer. In that light, I mean, in some ways the proposal is almost a representation of something close to heaven on earth, because with all due respect to the sea of TV cameras and load of reporters, nothing against our time together here over the last 60 days, but in a lot of ways it would represent heaven on earth to take him up on that offer of him taking my spot here for the last 16 months. But, you know, as much as I might like to do that, as much as I might want to do that, I really believe it'd be wrong for a couple of different reasons, and I want to go down those different reasons. And let me back up before I get into any of that and sort of explain the larger context of where I'm coming from. I was unfaithful to my wife. You all know that. Every South Carolinian by now knows that. I think the world knows that. Because when confronted with it, I laid all the cards on the table. I talked about it in absolutely painstaking detail. In some ways, I talked about it more than South Carolinians wanted to hear about it, but I mean, I laid the cards out on the table. And then in the wake of that, y'all in the media and pundits and everybody else analyzed it and dissected it and focused on it, reported on it, and then analyzed it and reported on it and focused on it some more, and then analyzed it and reported on it and focused on it some more, and then analyzed it and focused and reported on it some still more. And in that process, South Carolinians moved on. I mean, I was in Barnwell 2 nights ago, and I spoke there, and it was interesting the number of people who brought up the notion of jobs and the economy and what was going to happen next. They brought up this notion of restructuring. What is the real makeup of the way South Carolina government works? They brought up spending and what was or wasn't happening on that front. They talked about federal issues in terms of what was happening with health care or not happening. And they talked about a bunch of different things, but they weren't talking about this. And what I've consistently seen, I was at Hampton the other day for lunch. I was over in Somerville a number of days back. I mean, you retrace your corners of the state, and what you find is there's an amazing capacity for forgiveness with real-world people. And there's an amazing, I guess, acceptance of this notion that God can use imperfect people to perform jobs in all walks of life. I consistently get that when I talk to people across the state. And the one exception is here in Columbia, and I don't mean this negatively toward you all in the press, but you know, some in the press very much are still focused on this, and some in political circles are still focused on this. And so you end up with something of a circus, because in some cases, some in political circles want the next job, and they think that, you know, some stirring up on this front could help in that direction, or other folks view it as payback time. You know, I developed my long list of folks who weren't real fond of where we're coming from in the world of politics, and they figured, all right, it's payback time, live by the sword, die by the sword, you know, it's your time. With all due respect to some in the media, maybe some think it helps sell papers. I mean, there are a variety of different reasons as to why this thing has been chronicled as it has. And I don't mean that meanly, but I mean, when you look at the fact that this state is going to run a $100 million deficit this year, and the amount of coverage that has gotten versus some of these other things, it says, wait a minute, we do have some real big world issues that we got to be talking about, and it is incumbent upon even folks in the media to be talking about some of those things. And so I guess to cut to the chase, what I say in this letter is that I'm not going to be railroaded out of this office by political opponents or folks that were never fans of mine in the first place. Or put a different way, a lot of what's going on now is pure politics, plain and simple. And so what I talk about in my letter is, you know, me hanging up the spurs 16 months out, as comfortable as that would be, as much as I might like to do that on a personal basis, it is wrong. One, because as much as you might dislike somebody, it is not right to go out and try and rewrite history, because we have an incredible record when it comes to watching out for the taxpayer. And there have been attempts to sort of rewrite history on that front. You know, the first wrong was mine, pure and simple. And again, I've said more about it than ever needs to be said. But this next one, when folks actually go through all the numbers and look at all, again, the different matrix by which we can be compared, we come out looking incredibly good. And this goes well beyond simply the notion of us using a state plane a full third less than any previous administration or 1/2 less than one of the other administrations. It goes beyond selling off a jet that you could fly across the Atlantic in and saving $1 million in the process. It goes beyond using a Cessna to move around the state because it was cheaper using that than using a plane that burned jet fuel. What I'm talking about is, it turns out we begin to look into this, and if people want to be doing serious reporting or if they want to do serious investigation, they will be uncovering these facts. It turns out now, forget the cost of a business class ticket or a first class ticket or even a private jet across the Atlantic. Turns out now, as we begin to do our beginning of a little bit of looking around, turns out folks were flying back and forth on the Concorde from Europe in days past. It turns out that members of the General Assembly were flying on business class tickets. It turns out that there was a long-standing practice of drop-offs and pickups with regard to state planes and other assets that was in anything but the best interest of the taxpayer. It turns out that, you know, political leadership in the state used the state plane to go to golf outings or weddings or a whole host of things, and it really does need to be looked at within that larger context of how did this administration use these state assets or anything else that it was responsible for when measured against other administrations, other folks. So I think it's wrong to try and rewrite history on that front. I also think it's wrong given the constitutionally weak status of the governorship in South Carolina. As much as I might want to fold the tent, again, for future governors, just because folks might be frenzied up or frightened or other things in the General Assembly does not mean it is the right time to fold the tent. I would thirdly say that good decisions in the world of politics, as in every other area of life, are based on facts, not reports. And so if I was to go around the room, if I was to ask you, how many first class tickets have been bought by this administration, you'd say what?
Dozen or so, at least.
Okay, dozen or so. What would be your guess? 50? And we could go around the room and get different answers based on, and a fair assessment, because that's what originally got reported in the AP, and it's been picked up in every paper since then. I read in the Post and Courier this weekend. The answer is 0. And we can prove that. And I look forward to an ethics study that would actually begin to look at reality versus 12 or 50 first-class tickets when 0 were purchased. And so you don't want to make a decision in the world of politics based on innuendo, suggestion, or report when reality is something else. And finally, I would say, I send this letter humbly back to the Lieutenant Governor because I really do believe, and I would not be sticking around for this word, not for this abiding fact, that we have a real opportunity here in these last 16 months to do some profound things with regard to restructuring, with regard to spending, with regard to jobs and the economy in the state of South Carolina that have never been there before in the history of at least my administration. And I say that because in many cases, people kept assigning to me the next ladder up as to why I wanted to do this or that. Oh, he's only talking about stimulus because he wants to run for president. He's only talking about this because he wants this next spot on the ladder. Again, what is unequivocally clear is that the end of my time in politics is at the end of 16 months. But I do want to make the most of it. And I think that again, with people being able in the General Assembly with the House and Senate say, well, really, it ain't about him climbing the next spot on the ladder. It is about do we or don't we want to do this with regard to restructuring or to spending limits or different opportunities in the jobs and the economy. That's what I want to aim at. And that's what I'm going to be aimed at here over the next 16 months. And I just wanted to say that and leave it with you all. Ben, would you hand these things out? I thank you for your time. Appreciate it.